We talk to the legends of the creative and entertainment industries. We talk to those on the rise. Lance Dean Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcast Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Just like living in Oblivion, we had to go for a second take there due to a technical error. So thank you very much for joining me. This is a very special industry interview with one of my personal film director heroes. This man made the film that I would make my film crews watch before day one of filming. He's not only a very talented writer, director, and I guess in some ways a kind of iconic figurehead of the American indie filmmaking scene, but he's also a very talented musician and has an album coming out very soon. So before anything else goes wrong, let me bring in Tom Dicillo. Thank you so much for coming on, Tom. Again.
Thank you. My pleasure, Lance. Really great to see you. And it's Dicillo.
Is that Italian? Because I did want to ask you about that. Is that your parents are from the old country?
My father was.
Fantastic. Well, we might circle back round to that in a sec. Yeah. So I'm going to hit you up with my quick fire questions. Okay. And the first one is, what was the first film you saw on the silver screen as a kid?
I think the thing that just at least is burned into my memory is Fantasia, and I know it's called a cartoon, but there's some pretty amazing stuff in there, and I think it was the combination of image and music that really did a number on my, I guess, 6-year-old brain.
What was the last film you saw at the cinema?
I think it's going to be this film called Blackberry. Do you know this film?
I have heard of it. I haven't seen it.
It's well worth a watch. The irony is that when I saw it, I think in fact I was the only person in the theater, which if I can give you a contrast between those two experiences that you just mentioned, my first one as a kid was in a giant movie palace.
Right.
With ushers, with numbered seats, and I mean it was one screen, of course, just one screen, and it was packed. There probably was 1,000 people in the theater, right? Okay, so that's what my first experience watching a film was, right?
That's the experience I think we as directors all hope our audience will see our films under.
Yes. The last one was I was sitting alone in a I guess a 12-plex, you might call it, you know. Sure. And but the film, and I'm really glad I saw it projected, is this film called Blackberry, and it's a film that slipped under the radar, but a film that is very much in my psyche of what's interesting, and it's basically the history of the two guys that invented the BlackBerry, but it's told in a very funny and intense way, and I would highly recommend it. It's very smart, very surprising, and a beautifully made film, beautifully acted. But again, one of those low budget movies that just came and went.
I very much look forward to seeing that film. Do you have a movie, and it might be what I'd call a more commercial guilty pleasure, and I'll just chuck some examples at you, like, for example, Jurassic Park or Independence Day, a guilty pleasure movie that you maybe like to watch once a year?
Caddyshack.
Ah, mate, that's brilliant. I've got that in the next room.
It's brilliant. Are you kidding me? It's like everybody in it is just incredible. I love the tone of it. It's just it's goofy, but yet it's actually kind of smart in its own way too. So
it's funny because the guy who wrote it hated it, but and he hated the gopher. But I think the dancing gopher is one of the best things in it. I mean, it's
a little strange. I must say the gopher kind of takes me out a little bit. But then the scenes when Bill Murray is playing golf in the rain with the Reverend and lightning strikes, it's just there's just so much great stuff in it. So.
What television series, drama series since the year 2000 have you watched that you've gone, oh yeah, that is good. That's something I would have liked to have maybe directed an episode on. A lot of people will often chuck out The Wire or The Sopranos, but was there one show for you that you really thought, yeah, this is good.
The
This is
year
doing something new.
2000. What was
Since the year 2000. Anything after that, sort of since the millennia?
Atlanta. Did you ever see Atlanta?
I did. I've seen the first season. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were some things in it that I thought were really, really good. I felt that it kind of started going in circles in the last maybe 2 or 3 seasons, but still, I thought it was pretty well done.
Atlanta, fantastic. Okay, well, we're going to move on to your career, and I guess I'd like to know kind of how it all started for you. What was the nugget in your youth that set you on a path to becoming a filmmaker?
That's okay. I guess there were several nuggets because one of the most strange things, Lance, is that my father was a colonel in the Marine Corps. Okay, so and he came from a poor, lower middle class Italian family that had practically nothing, right?
Mm.
So, and he was not the oldest son, so he didn't get much. Okay, but what he brought to the family was this incredible sense of authority and discipline, which you could never challenge, right?
Right.
And a sense of the importance of improving your mind. Okay, he had a bachelor's degree in creative writing from in English from Michigan University. So what he did was, the first thing he did was refuse to have a television in the house. There was no television. So I started out having no access really to the moving image other than an occasional trip to the movies, right? But again, that stuff would have been stuff my parents would have chosen for me to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it did create this feeling for me, this of wanting to have this illicit thing. In other words, any chance we had to go to someone's house and watch television, or sneak into their back room and watch TV, it was like a drug. Experiencing the Lone Ranger. I don't know if you ever saw that series.
Yeah, that was kind of finishing its time just as I was starting to watch TV, so I did get to see a bit.
But it was just incredible, and so I developed this deep fascination for the moving image, which seemed to be illicit. Okay, and so I was at college, and my first year there, and I was majoring for some reason in psychology because I had no idea what else I was going to do, and I was coming home late from a class that I was flunking, statistics, and there was a bunch of people standing outside this building, and I said, "What's going on?" And this girl said, "We're starting a film society. Would you like to join?" And I said, "What's a film society?" And she told me, and the first film that they showed in this society was La Strada. Okay. That film, I can tell you right now, it was like an explosion in my brain, and the echoes of it are still going on even now. I had never seen anything like it in my life, but yet it felt like something I had been looking for my whole life. This idea of moving images telling a story that wasn't based upon a car chase or Indians and cowboys or it was a drama about human beings struggling to connect, and it had a bizarre humor to it, and the shots were strong and dynamic, and the writing was superb, and the direction was just incredible, and that was my introduction to Federico Fellini. And
you're talking about the 1954 movie, the one with Anthony Quinn. Is that the?
That's right, and Giulietta Massina, who ended up being Fellini's wife, and it just blew my mind. And I said, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to try to do that. I went to every film in the series. It went on from there to Buñuel, to Kurosawa, to Ingmar Bergman, to Truffaut, Godard. All of these people were my first immersion into the idea of filmmaking as different than what I was seeing as a child, you know. And that's when I really just said, I'm going to put my visual sense with my writing sense, which is what I was doing. And I said, I'm going to try to get involved in a profession that does both. And that's how I started. And I went to the library. There were no film schools really around where I was living. And my brother was moving to New York. And I checked out film schools in New York City, and I saw one called, NYU Graduate Film School. So as soon as I got out of my undergraduate school, I applied to NYU. I submitted my photographs and some short stories that I wrote, and they accepted me. And I moved to New York City, and got my master's degree in directing from New York University.
So, one of the things I've noticed about your work, especially having rewatched a lot of your films in the last 48 hours, including one I'd never seen before, is, and I mean, I might be wrong about this, but I sense a couple of themes that are quite consistent with your work. Please tell me if I'm wrong. One theme is that there's often a male protagonist who shares an unspoken connection or fascination with a female character who to him is often unobtainable for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yes. That's a theme I'm fascinating with, because perhaps I have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, mate, join the club.
Right.
And the other theme, which you often explore, and I think you do it very well, because you like to dig at a lot of the truths about working in media, the various media forms. You like to dig away under the surface of this is what it's like. This is what it's like to be on a film set. This is what it's like to be on a modeling shoot. This is what it's like to work on a soap. It's the price of fame. It's the price that comes with the glamour of those experiences, and you're very good at presenting those experiences from both the kind of this is what you see and this is what you don't see. And
I would say that's a fair assessment. I wouldn't say it's the price of fame. I would say fame is something that really interests me in whatever form that it takes, you know. But the industry, this business that we are in, of trying to use this medium, which is capturing live action with a device, whatever that device is now, you know. It's rarely a film camera. Even though we still call it film, but that method requires the collaboration of about at the least 25 people. Okay, it does, and so the more people that you have involved with helping you try to capture this invisible thing on film, right, the more chance you have of something going wrong or some crazy thing happening that is outside the world of the film that you are making. And what struck me from a very, very early time of being involved in filmmaking is how many times these accidental events or whatever was happening just off camera were a million times more interesting than the film being made. You know, and
that's very true.
That dichotomy really struck me, and just the process of making a film, how, you know, room tone. The first time I ever experienced room tone, I said to myself, I'm going to put that in a movie, and I did. I put it in a movie. It's room tone is for anybody who doesn't know what it is. It's usually when you're done shooting at one particular location. Every location has a very unique background sound. Yeah. So what you need to do is allow the sound person to roll his recorder for a minute without anybody moving or talking. And so everyone just stands in complete silence for 60 seconds. while he does this. And I'm telling you, every time I ever did it, your brain just goes off into these, because usually it's at the end of the day, you're exhausted. And that experience of room tone is particular only to filmmaking.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Who can forget the image of the world's best cheeseburger that you cut to, which I think this,
Yes. Well, the
yeah.
other thing I wanted to try to be honest with you, is that there was a period where independent filmmaking was perceived as a almost an equivalent to being Elvis Presley early on, and combined with Albert Einstein or something. The cool factor, right, about being an independent director struck me as just being really idiotic, because mostly every director I ever saw, including myself on the set, is a neurotic mess all the time. I don't care what anybody says. The pressure of shooting a film is just about keeps you on the edge of hysteria for the entire shoot. And very rarely is someone standing around smoking a cigarette in a leather jacket and admiring their profile. And so,
very true.
I wanted to make a film, Living in Oblivion, that showed actually the vulnerability of the director in particular. Okay, just to give you an idea of how strong that myth is. I had a very famous independent actor, an elderly guy who'd been in a lot of Cassavetes films, come up to me and Steve Buscemi at a festival where we showed Living in Oblivion. And he was furious at me. He said, "I know what you did with that director, man. Yeah, the director in Living in Oblivion was an idiot." And I just went, you know what, man? I don't think so. I think it was probably the most accurate thing, And and Buscemi's character in that film actually makes some pretty wise decisions in the face of catastrophe. But that's how strong that myth was of the director is everything, and I enjoyed poking a hole in that balloon.
I mean, you became an independent director, I would say, at a really exciting time, a time that doesn't exist now, because this is pre-streaming, this is pre-digital, so still it's quite hard for, filmmakers can't just pick up a camera or a phone and go and make a movie. Like my phone's got the same lenses on it that we shot, The Godfather was shot on, kind of thing. You had to go and find film, and a lot of people were like trying to hunt down offcuts of Super 16. You probably remember those.
Yes,
those days. But when you did Johnny Suede, which was 1991, this was around the same time. I think 91 was when Reservoir Dogs showed at the London Film Festival.
Yes.
It was the first time I met Tarantino. Everybody always keeps telling me I look like him. And you sensed it. There was a new wave of filmmakers coming. There was suddenly a lot of indie, not loads, but there were more independent films, and they were always quite interesting movies. There was always something quite different about them. Very true of your first movie, Johnny Suede. How difficult was it to pull together the finance for this first film? You're shooting on, you are shooting on film. Brad Pitt wasn't the star. He was sort of on the rise, but he wasn't a massive star then. He was an
unknown. In fact, that story in itself is pretty mind-boggling. But I mean, I kind of came onto the scene as a director about halfway in between these periods that you're mentioning, because I think independent film in its real, I don't know how to say this without sounding biased, but I do think that Jim Jarmusch's Stranger Than Paradise kind of broke open the world to the idea of independent film as being something more than you just show on a sheet in a parking lot somewhere, or a church basement. It was a successful art film. It made money. Now,
and you cut your teeth working with Jim Jarmusch as his.
Well,
Was
we
it
were
as his
both.
POV?
Yeah, yeah, and that's again a crazy story. We'll get back to the Brad Pitt story, but
Sure.
Jim and I were in the same directing class at NYU. We became good
Right.
friends. We shared the same sensibility, and one day the teacher suggested that we each she said we're going to make a short film, and she just randomly chose someone to write a script. She said, Jim, this was out of about 35 people in the class. She said, Jim, you write it. So-and-so will edit it. And she looked at me and she says, Tom, you'll shoot it. Okay.
Right.
I'd never shot anything. I mean,
Sure.
stills, but I'd never studied cinematography. I barely know how to take a light reading. And so there I was shooting a film. And that was my first experience of shooting a film for Jim. And our sensibilities really melded. And I think part of the idea was because I was not a director of photography. I did not have a preconception of what my job was. It was really just kind of both of us playing around. That's really what it was. And I would never say anything like, "No, we can't do that. No, I won't do that." Or which is something that we can get into later when people's sense of their own importance in their job actually shuts down the creative process.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up. But anyway, so we enjoyed working with each other. So I shot his thesis film, and then I went on to shoot Stranger Than Paradise, and so that was it. Just those two movies.
And then from there to Johnny Suede.
It took quite a while. So I worked as a house painter with my master's degree in directing, and having shot Stranger Than Paradise, I would sort of fluctuate between shooting films for complete unknowns, because those are the only people that would hire me, and then I would get tired of that. I would get tired of basically designing the entire visual world for people. I just said, Tom,
Sure.
you just do that for your own movie, and so it took me a while to just say, you know what, no more shooting, and that was tough because people identified me as Jim Jarmusch's cameraman, and I'm proud of everything that we did together. But I knew that it was time for me to take the step into why I went to New York in the first place and why I went to NYU to be a director. So I wrote Johnny Suede, right? And it actually came about through a series of monologues that I had put together in an acting class I was taking. One of the things that became very clear to me after my experience at NYU was just how little I knew about acting, and how crucial it was to be able to communicate with your actors.
Yeah, very
Because
crucial.
It's crucial, and I saw so many examples of that going in the opposite direction, where the director would be screaming at the actor in front of everybody, and I just said to myself, Tom, you got to make sure that that's something that never happens to you, and it never did.
No, good.
So
you do strike me as an actor's director. They say
well,
that.
I have a great respect for acting. I mean, I was taking an acting class, and the teacher just had me get up and do a scene, and I remember the first time that I stood up in front of the class and tried to make something come alive, in front of a group of people. I remember that feeling, and it was a great sense of excitement that was true, but at the same time, there's a kind of a terror that
Sure.
that you're wondering, can I do this? And that's where your preparation comes in and all that stuff. But recalling that feeling has given me a tremendous empathy for the actor when they are on the set, because it's usually the most chaotic and shall we say uncomfortable place for actors. There's noise. There's just intrusion. So anyway, I just felt that learning acting would was something I really wanted to do. So I put this script together, and man, how I got the money, I can't even remember, Lance. But it took me 4 years to raise $500,000, and
Right.
I did, and my God! And so I went out to we started. This is the Brad Pitt story I was going to tell you about. So
Yeah, go for it.
we couldn't find the guy to play Johnny Suede. He just the actors who came in New York just didn't get it. And I had a casting director who said, "Let's try California. Let's go out to LA. We'll spend a weekend in LA and see who we can find." So one of the last days in Los Angeles, I was introduced to Catherine Keener, who came in to audition.
Oh man, we have a whole conversation about her coming up.
I know. And so that's how I met Catherine. Okay, and then we still hadn't found Johnny, and the casting director said, "Listen, there's one guy out there. He's coming in. They're not much known about him. He's got a movie that's coming out in a while, but he did a Canadian TV series, and that's all he really did. And in walks this kid, Brad Pitt. I knew instantly two things. One, he was Johnny Suede, and two, he was going to be a star.
Right.
He proceeded to audition. I brought him, and he auditioned for me. He came back again and auditioned with Catherine Keener. The two of them were amazing together. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was so ecstatic that I'd found him after 2 years of looking, that I told my producer, we got the guy. And he says to me, "What are you talking about? We're not casting that kid." I said, yeah, we are. He's the guy. No, I'm not going to put this unknown actor in this film. You're not casting him.
Right. Oh,
so
I've had those conversations. How did that get resolved?
It got resolved by me turning my back on the $500,000. I walked away.
Shit.
And I started all over again. Now, miraculously, I refinanced the film the next weekend. It was a miracle. This never happened before in my life, but it was a Swiss producer by the name of Ruth Waldberger. She had produced for Godard and I forgot his name, an Iranian director. Anyway, she said, "Of course, you can cast whoever you want." That's what she said to me. Yes, if Brad is your choice, yes. And so I got everybody back, Catherine, Brad, and we made the movie with Brad Pitt.
That's a nuts story. I didn't know that about, the producer turning around and saying no. And we're not going to name names. But boy, did you get to meet that producer later and say, "Told you he was going to be"?
I cut them all off, because listen, that's the thing in this business. When you encounter that kind of idiocy and that destruction, the most important thing, the most healthy thing to do is to cut yourself free from it immediately, and don't look back.
I've done that. Good. But, that's extremely good advice for people watching.
But listen, let me tell you something. Knowing what I know now about the business, I don't even know what I was thinking. I mean, I guess I know what I was thinking when I turned my back. I really did believe that the Brad was the only choice, the best choice. And so I call that naivety, call it I don't know what, but I know that was a very difficult decision to make, especially having spent 4 years trying to find that money.
I know people that went to see this movie, and I didn't see it until a long time afterwards. I saw this movie after I'd seen 3 of your other films, by the way. But I know people that went to see this movie just because of Brad's haircut.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's interesting.
they saw the haircut on the poster. They were like, "What the is this?" But I've got to see what this is about. Now, is that a wig piece? Is that his actual hair?
No, it's not. It's entirely his hair, and it was inspired by the last film that I ever shot as a cinematographer was a low budget Japanese independent film. And I was in Tokyo for 2.5 months shooting it. And I went to this place there called Yoyogi Park, and on a Saturday. And what I saw blew my mind. In every corner of this park, there were groups of about 10 to 12 Japanese kids girls and boys, all dressed in black leather. All of the guys had their hair exactly like Brad's, so that the pompadour was not just a pompadour; it was enormous. And that's what inspired me. I suddenly said, wait a second, this film has to exaggerate things a little bit. Otherwise, there's a danger that it could look nostalgic. It could look like I'm trying to talk about Happy Days, right? And I
Yeah.
didn't want that. So I made a choice to make his hair really extreme. Okay. Like it's almost an aberration, right? And ironically, but it's funny that you say that about people wanting to see it because of his hair, because here in the United States, my entire distribution company was furious that this was their star with his hair
Right.
like that. Because what happened was he became internationally famous, Brad, with Thelma and Louise. And in that movie, he plays a guy whose hair is down in his face. He kind of looks like a classic American shaggy kid,
Yeah,
right?
sort of Beach Boy kind of
Yeah, yeah.
surfer guy. Yeah.
And so they felt that, oh my God, with his hair like that. And in fact, someone even said, yeah, too bad about his hair in a review.
I think that's one of the things that makes the film work, because he's kind of he's almost kind of an existential character in a way, and
Yes, he's
there's
hiding behind his hair. His hair
yeah.
is his statement because he has no idea who he is. So in fact, the way I rationalized it was the less he knows about himself, the higher his hair is going to be that day.
So I'm going to give you a chance, right, to clear up a rumor that I think you're going to want to address, so you can set the record straight today, because obviously a lot of your experiences of making your first film got poured into the things that went wrong, got poured into the script for Living in Oblivion, and as they would. But one of the things that's been said, which I don't believe is the case, is that the character of Chad Palmino is based on Brad Pitt and your experience of working with Brad Pitt on Johnny Suede. Now, I've been
Yeah.
told that that's not true, and that
Yes.
character is based on an entirely different actor who is actually no longer with us. So we can perhaps we can say who it was.
No, it
But
wasn't based on anybody. In fact, let me just say that it's a rumor. It happens to be a very destructive rumor because
yeah, that's why I wanted to give you a chance to refute it.
yeah, and it's funny that even though I say things about it, I'm going to just tell you. I'm just going to tell you the facts. That's all. And people, people tend to want to believe what they want to believe. So after I had a great experience working with Brad, and he actually his career literally, hit the stratosphere just as we were finishing editing Johnny Suede. So he was essentially kind of at a remove from me at that point. However, Catherine and Brad were very, very close. And when I wrote Living in Oblivion and gave it to her, because I'd written it for her, she said, Brad would be great at this part of Chad Palomino.
Right.
And so she got the script to Brad, and Brad said yes. And so for about 6 months, Brad was legally in to play Chad Palomino. So if I had written a part that was kind of being sarcastic towards my experience with Brad, that would never have happened. And
no, of course not.
And the only reason he didn't appear in the film was because he was committed to do some international press for Legends of the Fall, and he couldn't make it. And when Catherine called me to tell me that he had to pull out, I was on the phone with her, and she says, "Hold on a second," and she yelled out the window, "Hey, James, we're making a movie. You want to be in it?" And it was James LeGros walking by her house. And he said yes, without even reading the script or anything. And so that's how James LeGros got cast.
Right.
Okay. Now
he's a fantastic actor. I think very underrated, I have to say.
I totally agree with you. Now, so his hair, he had just finished making a film called Point Break in which he played a surfer. So his hair was long. All right.
Yeah.
And he wanted to keep it long. So it ends up both he and Brad Pitt had long hair at the time Living in Oblivion came out and was made. And so somehow people thought, remember Brad's long hair period where he was in Legends of the Fall, right? and so people made that assumption, and anyway, it was destructive in that it kind of set up a period in which I think Brad was distrustful. He felt that I had somehow betrayed him in some way, and I can understand it because, you know, it simply wasn't the case. And if I had had an issue with Brad, I would have told him. But
I think unfortunate. That's just an unfortunate set of circumstances that then also got fueled by the media and the rumor mill.
yeah,
And you know, I saw Living in Oblivion actually as part of a festival. I think it's difficult for me to remember because this is from a period of my life where all the memories are very fragmented. But I think it was either at the London Film, or it's a long story. I've got a big portion of my memory missing, but it was either at the London Film Festival or it was at the Nottingham Shots in the Dark Festival. But I remember seeing the picture of Living in Oblivion in the catalogue, and it had the still with Buscemi as the director, and I recognised our man from Young Guns in it as well. Dermot Maroney, and I just thought I've got to see this film. It's got two actors in it that I love. I've got to see this movie. Even at that screening, there were people saying that, and I was, you know, so it's one of those things. It's like Chinese whispers, you know, and false prophets and all that. So I'm glad that, and I can. When you work with an actor and you have a great experience for them, you're always going to write them apart in your next film.
That's
you just do it. It's one of the things you do. And if they're available, great. If they're not, and actually Brad would have been perfect for that role. But
I agree with you.
It's great that James LeGros, who was a much less well-known actor, got a chance to show his range in that film.
Well, listen. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody.
No.
But James told me, and because I respect everybody, really. But the whole gag of Chad Palomino looking at his reflection in the lens of the camera, right, before the take, you know, fixing his hair. Yeah. James told me that he got that from watching Patrick Swayze on the set of Point Break. Yeah. So, you know, anyway, it's a complete fallacy, and I happen to think Brad is a really, really fine actor. I really my admiration for him skyrocketed when I saw him in Snatch. An unbelievable film.
My best friend Jason Fleming played his brother in that.
Oh wow. Yeah, he was incredible in that movie. And then when he was in the baseball movie, I forgot the name of it.
I know the one you mean. Is it Rounders or
12? 12. No, it was I forgot the name of it. But he played the manager of a baseball team, and he was fantastic. Also in 12 Monkeys, I thought he was incredible. So
12 Monkeys, yeah. And I mean, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which just is an incredible movie. I just any time I'm feeling out of sorts, that's a film I put on. I'm wearing out my Blu-ray. I might have to get another one. One of the things that a very famous director said, John Sturges, who directed The Magnificent Seven, he said when he was making that film, if you cast the guts of a picture right, you've done half the work. And as soon as I heard that quote, I immediately thought of you, because you're like I said, you're an actor's director. You're really good at casting your supporting cast and even your bit players. You always seem to cast the right people. Not only have you brought us Catherine Keener, who's just an exceptionally gifted actress. She's wonderful. But also people like, is it Kevin Corrigan? Have I got the name correct?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember these. I haven't got a cast list in front of me. I'm trying to remember these off the top of my head. And a whole load of others. I think you gave Sam Rockwell one of his first.
Peter Dinklage. I cast Peter Dinklage in his very first movie.
Very first role. He's in Living in Oblivion. That was the first time I'd ever seen him in anything. So you've got a really good eye for talent. Michael Pitt, Alison Lohman, these are all exceptionally gifted people. I was particularly impressed in The Real Blonde that you cast Beatrice Windy, who is a 7 Tony nominated actress.
Yes.
She's one of the passengers in The Taking of Pelham 123, the original one, of course, not the
Right.
nonsense remake.
Right.
She's a phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
Sadly, no
Yeah.
longer with us. Did you know her from New York stage? Is that where you
Listen,
would get some people?
sometimes, but I have to tell you, I was extremely fortunate to be working with some really, really good casting directors. For example, on Johnny Suede, the casting director is a woman named Marcia Schulman. She brought in Catherine Keener. She brought in Brad. Let's see, Tina Louise. I don't know if you remember Tina Louise from that film. She was an American. She actually started out in film, but she ended up on television. But she introduced me to Kevin Corrigan. She introduced me to Sam Rockwell. And so I would never have even been aware of these people if Marcia hadn't shown them to me. Now, when she did bring them in, for example, when I saw Catherine and worked with her first, I said, wow, I don't know, just something about the energy and the intelligence and the ability and willingness to be a little foolish, to even though they took the work seriously, they didn't take themselves too seriously.
Right.
And there was a humor, there was a bizarre sort of humor, and there is in all of the actors that I love to work with. They're incredibly funny people, even in very desperate parts. For example, I knew no other actor could play the character of Les Galantine in Delirious than Steve Buscemi, who is, at times one of the most hilarious actors I've ever seen. And in that movie, he plays a very desperate person. So, but Sam Rockwell, just the creative imagination is something I look for. And because, as you say, once you do that, it most of the time makes your job easier, which is great.
Yeah.
and B, it actually adds, as what do you call it, the what'd you say that Sturgis said, the backbone,
the guts of the guts of the cast. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guts of the motion picture, I think, might be.
Yes, because the cast, it has to work. It really has to work. And I've been in situations where the cast didn't work, and it was agonizing. And because especially on a low budget movie, you rarely have the opportunity to stop shooting and recast, if ever. I mean, sometimes that happens on big budget movies, but not a lot. It's once the machine gets rolling, it's really, really difficult to stop it.
Your next picture after Living in Oblivion was The Real Blonde, and actually of all your films, this is the one.
No, actually, sorry. The one after Living in Oblivion was the film that was supposed to be my second film, and it ended up being my third film. That was Box of Moonlight, starring.
Okay, that's
yeah.
You know what? That's interesting because I don't think that was released in the UK until after The Real Blonde, but I might have got that wrong, and it might have just been the order that I saw them in.
Right. I think it was. There was I remember coming over there for the release of that, but yeah, that came out, and then the same company, enjoyed that experience and cast helped me finance the Real Blonde.
So one of the reasons I want to mention The Real Blonde, first of all, all of your films, this is the one I've watched the most, even though must have seen Living in Oblivion 50 times. Because I really relate to the Matthew Modine character in it, and what's going on with his relationship at the time. I also just think it's a really beautiful, quirky film with some really interesting dynamics. And there's a few questions I want to ask you about it.
Great. Let's get into it.
But Matthew Modine he's an actor that I absolutely really admire. I particularly thought his performance in the film and the band played on was absolutely outstanding. And I met him when I was very young, and he was working in the UK on a film called The Memphis Belle.
Yes.
And there was a lot of American actors on that film, and of all the American cast, he was the one who would come and play with all the extras and play football with us, and
Oh, wow.
come and chill and have a chat with us. He was the and one of the words I would use to describe a lot of your actors, not just their performances, but them as people when you see them off camera talking, is the word authentic. I think is a really good description for a lot of the people you work with. So
Yes.
tell us about how you came to cast Matthew, and how was that? Because he was quite pretty big star by the time he did The Real Blonde, I think.
Yeah. That was an interesting experience. Every film has, as you know, Lance, a turbulence that surrounds it.
Yeah.
And whatever gets swept up into that motion is what ends up being the film. And if you're lucky, sometimes you can the centrifugal force jettisons something out, which is good. Okay, so here I was facing my first and only studio film.
Right.
Okay, I'd never made a studio picture, and they gave me a budget of $6 million, right? Which, if you look at studio films, they don't even, that's not even enough for like, craft service for 2 weeks.
Not on a Marvel film, no.
No. And so nonetheless, they put this pressure on me immediately. Tom, you have to cast stars in every role. This is the production company.
Right.
Not Paramount. Paramount was the company that ultimately distributed. But my producer said, you got to put stars in every role. Well, the first sign of trouble was when they said that I couldn't cast Catherine Keener. And I said, what? You just distributed a film in which she played an incredible part in it. She was great in Living in Oblivion. She was in Box of Moonlight. I said, and I wrote the part for her. So,
and she'd done other work by then as well, I think.
Some, yes. Yeah. And so I was really, really in a tough spot. So I just delayed and began casting around her. So,
right.
And my casting director at that time was really, really good in terms of giving me really strong alternatives in terms of the cast. So, for example, Kathleen Turner plays a somewhat small part, but still, she's incredible in it.
She's fantastic in this film.
And I felt no qualms whatsoever about having a star in my film because she was great. She was fantastic. Christopher Lloyd was fantastic. Matthew Modine was fantastic. And so I was thrilled. Maxwell Caulfield, Dave Chappelle.
Dave
Chappelle. And so there I was. And anyway, but to your question, ultimately, I did win the Catherine Keener battle, of course,
right.
By sheer just insistence. I said, listen, I've put stars in every other role, and this is who I'm casting. So I said, you take it or leave it, because I'm not playing this game with you anymore. Because I knew she was incredible for the part. So anyway.
Perfect. I can't see anyone else playing that role in the movie.
Yeah, so I met Matthew at a coffee shop in the village, and we were talking, and I knew them the second he walked in that he was the guy. There was something. One thing I didn't really notice from his other film work was that he's got these incredible eyes, these blue eyes, and I just said, man, I never really noticed that about him. I said, if I can get the audience to see into him the way I'm seeing into him right now, he's going to be great in this part. And he committed. He was he was a joy to work with. And
well, he follows me on Twitter and occasionally comments on things that I post about. And I mean, he's always been on my sort of top 20 actors to work with in my lifetime. I've followed his career since way back. He did a film called Birdie with Alan Parker.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, who directed a number of friends of mine in other movies, and just outstanding. I do want to ask about the casting of Elizabeth Berkley, because at the time, Showgirls had come out by the time you were casting this, I believe.
Yeah, right.
And that film at the time, it's kind of considered a cult classic, but at the time, It was derided. It was, it was
Yes.
it was a critical black mark on everybody who was associated with it,
And particularly her.
particularly her. She took a lot of the blame, and one of the reasons I remember when I saw her name on, I think she did this and Cursed Jade of the Scorpion with Woody Allen around the same time, maybe slightly earlier. But I remember thinking, oh, someone's given Elizabeth Berkley another chance. I really want to see what she's like in this, and she was great, really good, nailed the part, perfect for the part. Was she suggested to you? Did you?
She was suggested to me. I was, of course, aware of what was going on with Showgirls, and I think I might have had one of the only reactions like this that I recall. But my question that came to my mind was, wait a second, why don't you blame the director and the writer? if you're going to blame somebody, these people were just doing what they could to be in a movie, and I didn't see the film, but my casting director brought Elizabeth Berkley in, and she was amazing and gracious and with a sense of self-respect. You could feel the weight of what had happened to her, and what she was going through. But she didn't show it. She wasn't bitter. She just came, and I said, you know what? I really like that about her, and she also had a great sense of humor. And
I've heard from several people in the industry she's an absolutely lovely human being, a delightful person to work with, and so I hope she gets even more work. Dave Chappelle wasn't that big when he did this.
No, he wasn't. No. I had originally approached Chris Rock, which Dave got a huge chuckle out of, and Chris Rock was going to do it,
Right.
Then he pulled out, and so the same casting director that introduced me to Kathleen Turner, Christopher Lloyd, Elizabeth Berkley said, "What about Dave Chappelle? He's an up and coming comic that you might like." And so I said, I met Dave, and I cast him immediately. We basically just hit it off. And
he's got. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but he's got one of the funniest scenes in the film and one of the funniest scenes in all of your film's catalogue. I've shown that scene in many a movie quiz at my house at Christmas. In fact, scenes from your films often get shown at my movie quizzes, but that one and the Peter Dinklage dwarf scene, yes. those two get a lot of screen time in my house. I have to ask this: did you ever get feedback or communication with Madonna about this film and this whole sequence?
No, but I'll tell you one thing she did. She let us use that song for free. So I was really pleased by that.
Oh, that's because I think that was quite key to making the film work. Really, the narrative of the story work.
There is an element in the script that is painfully autobiographical, which is that one day my phone rang, and this woman is saying, no, actually, they left a message on my answering machine.
Yeah,
and it was this voice said, "Hi, this is Madonna. I'm trying to reach Tom Dicillo. If you can, if this is his number, can you please call me back at da." I was like, I couldn't believe it, and so I immediately wrote down the number and began calling. Right. Never answered anybody. And it was finally my wife looked at me and she said, she just kind of gave me this painful smile. She says, "Tom, do you really think Madonna would just call and leave you a number? Come on, wake the fuck up. What are you doing?" So I put that whole thing in the movie. That's how the whole Madonna element got into the film. Which somehow spurred the idea of Buscemi appearing as a music video director directing Madonna. Or what appears to be Madonna in a video. So
did you ever find out who pranked you with that?
No, never.
Well,
never.
Right into the Outcast Creative on Facebook and let me know if it was you. I really like this movie. I particularly like this scene with Kathleen Turner where they're it's that typical end of the day audition scene and suddenly somebody comes in that surprises you all and does something amazing. And I mean, that in some ways you could say that's based on the experience of you casting Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I guess it also, at that point in the film, I had worked hard to bring Modine's character to a point of almost, I don't know how to say it. Everything that could have gone wrong for him has gone wrong, right? Everything he thought he knew about himself is just gone, and he's got nothing really left except this audition. And the audition is about, really, it's from Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, and it's about this guy who is just yearning to stand up for himself and to really just, make himself seen. And Modine brought it, and and so that was the whole idea, was that here suddenly someone comes in and does something that based upon what's going on in their life, they bring that life to this artificial situation, which is performing in front of 4 people, right? And convincing them that this emotional world that they're in is authentic, as you said.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. But I was fascinated by the fairy tale quality that exists in this business, Lance. We both know it. If we didn't really believe in the fairy tale, which is that, sometimes miracles do happen, we would not be in this business. Okay. And now and so, in other words, that's one of the fairy tales of this business, which is the guy who actually finally does deserve the part without even thinking that he's ever going to get it.
Yeah, that's very true. I do want to talk about Delirious, which I saw for the first time yesterday, and actually it got discussed in detail on my regular chat show, the Nielsen Ratings. We do that every Tuesday at 10 o'clock unless I'm away. And I messaged my regular panel and I said, guys, I want you to watch this film. And most of them did watch it. And they all loved it. Northern English Bastard, who's one of them, he commented earlier, watched Delirious. Yeah, excuse the name. Watched Delirious last night for the first time. Really enjoyed it. The shot heard around the world. Right. I mean, one of the other things that I guess is a theme with some of the characters throughout your movies is that this dysfunctionality, and that's a common thing in the industry we work in, that you almost have to be slightly dysfunctional to work in this industry because you have to work crazy hours, you have to do crazy things. And Steve Buscemi's character is very dysfunctional, yet he is also brilliant at the same time. And then he meets somebody else who is quite dysfunctional, but enables him to find his brilliance, in the form of Michael Pitt, who's another actor that I admire a great deal. You wrote this for Steve Buscemi. He was quite resistant about taking it on initially, and then you kind of kept rewriting it for him. Well, I mean, is that fair, or do you want to elaborate on that further?
It's fair. It's a bit more complicated than that, because you work with people. Now, I worked with Steve first. I knew him from early on. I was actually going to cast him in Johnny Suede, but eventually went with someone else. But I knew his work from New York theater. That's something that I really knew. But then, he was in Living in Oblivion, and we became great friends. And I thought he was just so brilliant in that, as he was in all the stuff that he does. I think he's brilliant. I think his performance in Fargo is just,
God, yeah, what an amazing performance that is.
So, and then he did a cameo for me in The Real Blonde, and then he was also in Double Whammy, and I thought he did a fantastic job in that film. But I said to myself, because I was struggling to make another movie, and I finally just had to go back to some basic things, which is, Tom, who do you love working with? And I said, well, Steve. I said, well, why don't you write this thing for Steve? And I did. I had the idea. it's based on a paparazzi that I had actually kicked off the set of about 5 films.
Right.
So
So
and
you
he
got
actually
to,
did,
you knew that character fairly well then.
really, really well. And Steve knew him too. Anyway, the guy became an advisor on the film. I hung out with him for about 5 weeks, researching with him, researching the part. So I wrote this for Steve, and I said, Steve, I've got something for you, a lead part in a film. And I was so excited about it, and I sent it to him. I just waited, a week goes by, 2 weeks, nothing. I don't hear anything. Finally, I ran into him at a dinner, and I said, Steve, did you get the script? He said, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I said, why?
Words you
What's
don't
it?
want to hear.
And I said, why? He just, I don't know. The guy is, he's just, I don't know. He's unlikable. And I went, I don't know. It struck me as an odd comment because he's played a lot of unlikable characters, right? I mean, let's take the guy in Fargo. Tough person to really like come to terms with, like why you would want to like that character, but you do. Why is it that you do? It's because of what Steve brings to it, right? And that's why I knew. I said, yeah, there are problems with the character of Les Galantine. In other words, he is an angry, bitter, very damaged human being, but still you're gonna need to want to be close to him and not be repulsed by him. And I said, there's only one actor who could do that, and that's Steve. And that's why I wrote it for him. Well, he said no. And then I think maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, he wrote me and said, listen, maybe if you, I don't know, tone down some of this and about the guy, his anger or something. I said, okay. So I made a couple of small tweaks, Lance, not much.
Right.
And then, finally, I even started thinking about other actors, and it stopped me cold. I couldn't think. I just couldn't imagine anybody else doing the part. And one day, my wife said to me, because Steve lived in Brooklyn at this time, she said, "Why don't you take the car?" Because I didn't have a car. She said, "Take the car and just call Steve, that you tell him that you're having a meeting out there somewhere near his house, and that you're going to be in his neighborhood, and see if he wants to get a cup of coffee." I never would have thought of that. I never would have thought of that.
She had your back,
She did. She did. And so she totally did. I mean, my God. So I called Steve. I said, "Hey, Steve, I'm meeting a friend literally right around the corner from me. You want to grab a coffee?" He goes, "Okay." I drive there. It was this intense February, bitter, cold day. We go to this coffee shop. He sits there and he says, "Well, I don't know, Tom." And then, to my amazement, he started reciting some of the lines from the script.
Right.
And they were so incredible, Lance. The character was there right in front of me. I saw it. And he goes, I just don't know, Tom. I don't know. And we walked back to his apartment. Standing out on the street, I looked at him. I said, "Steve, what do you say? You want to do this? And he just stared at me, Lance, for about a minute. Then another minute. Then another minute. And I realized he wasn't going to answer me. So I said, "Okay, Steve." And I got back in the car and I drove home. Now, about 6 months later, I had this idea to have a staged reading of the screenplay. And just for the hell of it, I said, "Hey, Steve, I got a bunch of actors together. Do you want to come read the part in a stage reading?" To my amazement, he said yes. We had this stage reading. From the moment he began reading, the entire room was, nobody could take their eyes off of him. Every other person in the room, every other actor.
Right.
And when it was done, there was this sense of everybody was stunned. And next thing I know, he comes up to me. He puts his arms around me with tears in his eyes and says, "Tom, I see the guy now. I see him. Let's make this movie."
Was Michael Pitt at that reading as well? At that time?
No, he wasn't there yet. Because because I didn't have the money. I didn't
early,
have the money.
early days. You just got to ring your friends,
Yeah.
and I
But
get it.
that's, it was that moment, and from the second he said that, he committed his entire soul to this character. And now, I don't know. It's so funny about what gets recognized and what doesn't get recognized, and that's okay. That's just the way this business is. But I think his performance in Delirious is one of the best performances that I've ever witnessed.
It is an incredible performance, and the pairing of him with Pitt works. They work off each other really well, and
They should both have gotten Oscar nominations for that film.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I kind of feel a bit ashamed to say that I only saw the movie for the first time yesterday.
Well, you're not the only one, because the way the film was distributed, it played a week and that was it. So it was just
and it would have come out at that time when the DVD rental market was big, but piracy was just sort of starting to happen. And also there was an explosion of content. So it was a film of yours that I completely missed. I don't think it got a general release in the UK.
No,
film festivals and such probably.
It might have. It believe it or not, it won the not believe it or not. I'm happy to say that it won the I got best director and best screenplay at the San Sebastian Film Festival. So we all thought coming out of that was our first festival that the film was going to do really well, and the response there was just tremendous, and I'm really proud of the film. I think it works really well.
Who was the distributor on that? Was it Miramax?
No, it was a company that financed the film.
Right.
They screwed up by, once the excitement started building at San Sebastian, they sent the film on DVD to all the U.S. independent distributors.
Right.
And without telling me. And the way I have always screened my films for people in the past, for interested buyers, was to set up a screening.
Yeah, proper screening with so that I could see it like a real audience.
Yes. And so all these people sat at their desks in the middle of phone calls and emails, and so they all passed on it. Every single one passed on it. Yeah,
that's a terrible way to particularly with this film. It's very talking heads and how humans communicate and functional dysfunction. You need your attention.
I'm gonna object there for 1 second. I don't think it's talking heads.
Well, it's still very visual. It's very visual. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is it's not a film to watch on your laptop with a DVD whilst you're having to take phone calls and do emails. You'll easily get taken out of it unless you're in a movie theater. That's the way to see it. So I completely understand why that went the way it went, I think, and why you would be very upset about that, because I think that's totally the way they should have watched it, and I think the reaction would have been very different. I watched it yesterday, and I'm sure a lot of people do this now. I was trying to catch up on everything, and I've got 2 script writing jobs on at the minute, and so I put it on, and I thought, well, this is one I haven't seen. I've got to make sure I at least have seen it. I put it on, and I was trying to carry on with my writing and stuff, and 10 minutes into the film, it was tools down and then full screen, and I watched it properly. So you'll be pleased to hear that it took me out of my, and rightly so. And I'm glad it did that. And I was really hooked quite early on to the story. Once Michael Pitt and Buscemi were together, I was like, I really want to see where this.
I was greatly influenced in the shooting of that film by one of my favorite films, which was Midnight Cowboy.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
But we had very little money, and so what it required was a shooting style a little different than some of my other films, so that I had to kind of constantly keep the camera moving, right, and go fast. And if I'm going to do a master, do a reverse master right afterwards, so that I had something to cut to. And so there is a great energy. The film was shot by this guy named Frankie DeMarco, and he operated the camera, and a very interesting style of shooting for me, which I would usually do different kinds of coverage. I don't like just to do masters, close up, I feel like every shot should have a unique and very special purpose, right?
Right.
So this was a great way to shoot quickly, but yet get great energy from the actors. I don't know if you remember that scene where the kid Michael Pitt comes back with the toothpicks.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and Steve smashes them on that. They go all over the floor in the apartment, and
well, that scene was shot down the length of this apartment in two masters. One master shooting this way, one master shooting this way, so that I had something to cut to, and I could still keep them both in the frame because they had great energy together. And I'm really proud of the way that was shot.
The film had a really wonderful color aesthetic to it as well, but it felt very sort of grainy, like you referenced Midnight Cowboy, and I can it had those kind of colors as well. That was the kind of that underbelly of New York feeling.
Yes, I mean, if you go back, if you go back and look at Midnight Cowboy and really just let's say get a good copy of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not grainy. It's not grainy. What it is that the guy who shot it is one of my favorite cinematographers. And now, of course, I'm going to blank on his name, which is terrible.
No, that's all right, but you're allowed to do that because we're of a certain age and we can't store all the information indefinitely and have it on command as we want. It's I'm bad for doing that with names all the time.
But if you look at it, you'll see that it has actually a beautiful contrast and richness to it. And the choice of color, particularly this kind of turquoise blue next to skin tone, was something that the DP was really, really skillful at using. And it really is quite rich looking.
Yeah, I mean, I the film drew me in very successfully in that regard. The cinematographer you're after, I believe, is Adam Hollander.
Yes, from Adam Hollander.
Yeah, and he is still around. God, he shot Midnight Cowboy. He's still going, and I mean, people will have seen quite a lot of films that he shot probably without even knowing that your average cinema goer. The Dream Team and The Boy Who Could Fly are two films that he was DOP on, and they're both movies I'm very fond of, actually, looking at his resume. So it's on DOPs. Do you like to use the same DOP again and again, or does it just depend on who's available? Do you have one in mind because you write most of your own scripts? Are you often thinking this would be good for so and so? I think that they'd be good for shooting this. How do you approach that?
I will say that in my filmmaking career, that is one thing that has been somewhat of a mystery to me, which is hiring the visual collaborator. I worked with the same editor on many films. I've worked with the same actors on several films. I've used the same DP on a couple of films, but I found that there was something that just wasn't, I don't know how to say this. I never really found the person that was was the way I was for Jim Jarmusch.
Right. Okay. Got you.
Do you see what I'm saying? Coming up with ideas, thinking outside the box, saying, "Hey, what about this? Hey, just coming up with their own unique vision." Because yes, the director, of course, dictates the vision, right? And I say dictates in the sense makes it clear, should have something clear. That's all I mean. I don't mean he takes a whip and whips people into that. But it's always incredible to have somebody working on your team that is bringing a very wonderful and unique vision of their own. And because if they're excited about it, they're going to continue to generate excitement for you, and I'm always of course involved in every shot, what it is, but I also love to be surprised, because when I'm directing, you have a million things on your mind.
Sure.
I'm most of the time watching the acting, really focusing on the acting, because I do believe that if you have a really, really good actor and the scene is lit by a light bulb right beside their head, right, you're going to have a great scene.
Yeah.
It will. Now,
Yeah.
if you have a really beautifully shot scene, beautifully lit, and it's an incredible camera move, and the acting sucks.
Yeah. The scene is a write-off. Yeah.
So you know, Frankie DeMarco did a fantastic job on Delirious. He was a real joy to work with. Uh, so you know, it's hard finding somebody that melds with you. When I guess it's something that you know something about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I always like it to be a very organic collaboration with the DP, but I mean, normally what I'll do is I'll talk through the shot list with them beforehand, before
Right.
the day, but I'll want the freedom. You know how it is. 20 things don't work out the way you think
Right.
they're going to on the day. You've got no plan survives contact with the enemy. Golden rule of filmmaking number 2: after proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Number 1. So you've got to be able to have that relationship with the DP where you go, okay, we haven't got 40 minutes to shoot this. We've got 20
Right.
minutes. What are we going to do? And you want them to be able to come up with ideas, not to get entrenched in, no, I had to shoot it this way.
Right. Right.
And I'm quite lucky in the sense that I've never worked with a DOP I haven't got on with. I've worked with some great first ADs, and I've worked with some terrible first ADs.
Right.
But I've always got on with my DPs, and they've always brought something to the table. And then I've surprised them as well occasionally and said, hey, what if we put the camera up on top of the building and we shoot him coming out onto the balcony?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's you want an organic collaboration, and I think that's probably what you had with Jim, and
Yeah.
with a bit of luck you're going to get it again.
Yeah.
Before we start to wrap up, I've got to ask you a couple of questions about what I would describe as one of your more surreal movies, Box of Moonlight. I
Right.
saw this on video, VHS,
Mm.
rented it from the store. And then the first time I've watched it since then, which would have been, I think, probably 97 or 98, again, was yesterday. And man, so many questions, because I'd forgotten so much about this film when I first watched it. So one of the people I was a massive fan of Lisa Blount.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, I
you're
know.
the only director I've interviewed on this channel who has worked with her. Tragically, she passed away very young. I was a big
Yeah.
fan of her from Office and a Gentleman.
Yes. What a performance that was. Oh.
Yeah, who can forget that last scene where she's breaking
Yeah.
down in tears because she's kind of happy for her friend, but at the same time tortured because her friend's got the package that she wanted. And then also John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, you know, one of his later horror films that was really strong, I thought. Yeah, she's great in that. How was she to work with, and she's not an obvious choice in your casting pond? I'm kind of interested to hear how she came about being involved in the film.
See, it's when you say that, not obvious choice. Every film has its own particular, demands and requirements. So
Sure.
this film was shot in its entirety out in the woods of Knoxville, Tennessee. It takes place in a small American town. So I needed people that looked like they could be from there, and a crucial role was her part as Catherine Keener's sister in this film, and there is a similarity if you look at that picture that's up there now. I mean,
yeah.
And so she's also, ironically, Lisa Blount was born about 20 minutes away from where we shot the entire film.
Right.
In Tennessee, and her accent. Anyway, first of all, she was people use this word all the time, a dream. Well, it was a great joy working with her because never an issue about anything. Shooting outside is always presents a whole different dimension of problems.
Weather and
yes, it's just a location. Light. Yes, just she never complained once. She and Catherine got along great. She and Sam Rockwell were just fantastic together. And all she did was bring a great sense of joy and an incredible understanding of this character, which actually made me feel confused at times, because at the end of a take, I would literally have nothing to say.
Yeah, and actors can quickly get insecure about that, and they're like, was I okay? Right. Yeah, fine. Just do the same thing again. You don't want anything else? No. Just the same again. Perfect. And it's funny that.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story about that real quick, because I actually have to get going. But sure. the whole sense of these two women and John Turturro's journey was to get him out into some form of enjoyment of the sensual aspects of life. Okay. And whether it's eating a tomato right off the vine, or just feeling the breeze on your skin, whatever. And so he ends up jumping in the water with these two in this quarry, and it was supposed to be somewhat idyllic, and it was, except for the fact that Turturro could not swim, which was
minor issue.
That quarry was 300 feet deep too. So right. Anyway, so we shot the exterior shots of them jumping in. And it was a day, just like it's pictured, a very sunny, beautiful day. The next day, we were supposed to shoot the underwater stuff, which was the bodies going underwater in slow motion, after jumping off the rocks, right?
Right.
We had a swimming pool, a big giant swimming pool, which we had camouflaged with netting and stuff, and all set up for us. The temperature dropped about 50 degrees. It was cloudy, right? Now, which is okay because we were shooting underwater, okay? So we were able to shoot. Nonetheless, it was freezing. Right. It was freezing. So here we were, the actors kind of tedious, the underwater camera getting down there. Lisa has to jump in. She has to hit her mark, her feet hitting into the water, right? At one point, I look up and I see all the actors standing, just shivering like this, right? And I looked over, and here's my entire wardrobe department. This is why Living Oblivion was made, okay? There's my entire wardrobe department sitting in down coats, watching. And I said, "What the fuck are you doing? The actors are freezing up here." They said, "We don't have anything." You know what I did? I got the lighting department to set up the biggest light that was in the truck, a giant, giant light, set it off to the side, turned it on, and the actors stood in front of it.
Right.
Right. And I never forget Lisa Blount standing there with steam coming off of her body. And that's how I kept the actors warm. Anyway,
that's fantastic. Well, look, we'll wrap it up because I know you've got to go. I had in my notes about that film that one of the theories I had was that somehow he'd gone in some kind of parallel universe, and Sam Rockwell was actually his kid, because he had the fireworks in the car, and there was all these parallels between what his kid wanted and what Sam Rockwell's character was doing. Right. And I did wonder if there was going to be this sort of twist at the end that somehow Sam Rockwell was somehow his kid in the future or in a parallel.
Well, you're not far off. You're not far off. The idea was, as you remember from the film, John Turturro's relationship with his own young son in the film is very strained, and
that's right,
very, very rigid, and he rarely shows any sort of understanding of what a child is, and so really what Sam represents, what the kid represents, is the child that John Turturro is stifling in himself.
Right, and he brings it out of him.
And he brings it out of him. He says, "Yeah, you know what? Which one would hope would affect the way John treats his own son."
Well, I'm going to leave the final words to Wayne Byrne, whose book I'm going to plug.
All right, Wayne, our old friend Wayne.
Yeah, Johnny Suede left the exact same impression on me as Lestrada had on Tom. It changed my life, opened the world to me, and I say that without exaggeration. Wonderful chat tonight. Love to you, Tom.
Oh, Wayne is incredible. He's a brilliant writer. He's Wow, just sitting with him and working on that book for Johnny Suede was an amazing experience, and all my films. He went through all my films with me. But he told me that Johnny Suede was a film that he first saw.
Well,
And
I said to you, Tom, that you attract authentic human beings, and
yes,
Wayne Byrne is
yeah,
as authentic as they come, and he's responsible
yes,
for this interview happening,
yes,
and I thank him from the
yes.
bottom of my heart.
Well,
Tom,
I'm so proud of him. Actually, all the books he's written, it's just incredible.
well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. I could have easily chatted for you for another hour. And listen, if you do another film, and I hope you will, please do come back on and talk to me
I
again.
will. I will
Uh,
take you up on that invitation, Lance.
Please
All
do.
right.
And if you're in London, then I'm cooking you dinner. So that's
Sounds good.
fantastic. All right.
All right. All right.
Listen, thank you,
Thank
Tom,
you. All
so
right.
much.
Well, thank you,
And
Lance.
I'll take you out. Okay.
Okay.
So that was Tom Dicillo. Fantastic, wonderful guest. What an honor it was to talk to Tom for so long. I've had him on for 85 minutes there. And I do want to plug the book by Wayne Byrne, The Cinema of Tom Dicillo. It's out now on Amazon. It's a fantastic book. I've actually been sent a copy. I've been reading it through. You're going to hear all the stories that Tom and I talked about and more in great detail. It's an incredible book. It's available on Amazon now to order, so you can buy it straight away. So thanks very much for everybody tuning in. Thanks for people in the chat. As I said, it wasn't quite enough time, but yeah, absolutely fantastic guest, and just a wonderful insight into how Tom made his films, cast his films, and he's worked with several actors that I think are hugely, hugely underrated. In particular, Kevin Corrigan, who I wanted to give a shout out to, who was in Living in Oblivion, plays one of the film crew. Elizabeth Berkley, of course, who, as you know, he, despite all the cloud around Showgirls at the time, gave her a shot, and she more than proved her worth. Great to see Maxwell Caulfield in this kind of role, which he relished. If you haven't seen the films of Tom's, I strongly recommend you track them down now. You will not be disappointed. I have to say my favorite of his is probably The Real Blonde, which is up on the screen now, with Delirious and Living in Oblivion kind of coming about the same, because just Steve Buscemi absolutely nails Delirious. If you haven't seen it, it's probably the performance of his career. I'm not joking. Absolutely fantastic film. We talked about it on the Nielsen ratings last night. And who knows? I might get Steve Buscemi rather, on here to talk about it one day. But yeah, what a fantastic performance. So that's it from me. We're going to be back on Sunday to cover the next 2 episodes of Spartacus. I will probably be doing a gaming stream between now and then. I might even do one later today. But no, I won't. I've got an early start tomorrow. I just remembered. Yes. So catch us on Sunday. I've also got another fantastic interview with director of photography, Roy Wagner, coming up next Friday. That's going to be another fantastic one. He was the DOP on Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. He also did one of my favorite Johnny Depp films of all time, Nick of Time, which co-stars Christopher Walken. That's going to be another fantastic interview and conversation. Until then, don't forget to tell the people that you care about that you love them, and I'll see you all again real soon.